Hi, my name is Macy Yelman, and this is my Speech 2 presentation. Here are my audience members. And here I'll begin. So, on September 11, 2001, the world changed forever as the devastating terrorist attacks unfolded in the United States. The September 11th attacks, commonly known as 9/11, were 4 coordinated suicide terrorist attacks carried out by Al-Qaeda against the United States on Tuesday, September 11, 2001. These attacks were located at the World Trade Center in New York, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. There were 2,996 people killed. The September 11th attacks triggered massive changes in U.S. security and aggressive military responses to stop the terrorism from happening in the future. The terrorist attacks of 9/11 marked a significant turning point in history, establishing an unprecedented tragedy, global counterterrorism efforts, and ongoing challenges now and ahead. Where I should begin is how all of this started with the attacks that led America to become involved in this pressing issue. The attacks on September 11, 2001 caused America to deal with and face a tragedy that they had never seen before and learn to overcome it. The attacks occurred at several locations across the country, all within hours of each other, causing physical and mental destruction all in one day. According to the 9/11 Memorial Museum, on that fateful day, 19 hijackers carried out 4 suicide attacks. They commandeered 4 commercial airplanes, with 2 of them flown into the iconic World Trade Center towers in New York City, the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Based on the actions of what happened that day, society in America was in shambles, living with constant fear about what was going to happen next. Pew Research states that 63% of Americans said that they couldn't stop watching news coverage of the attacks. Even though they were devastated, most were shocked because nothing like this had ever happened before, and they almost needed to watch it repeatedly to convince themselves that things would never be the same. There were several studies that showed even over a year later, half of the adults studied said that they were more afraid, more careful as a result of the attacks. But the United States and many others around the world soon realized what needed to be done to be able to restore people's faith in their country and their safety. The concern for global terrorism became a top priority for people all around the world, and many efforts were made to ensure that it be stopped. The United States personally took affirmative actions to make sure that something like the events of 9/11 would never happen to the country again. According to the U.S. Department of State, on September 23rd, George W. Bush signed an executive order to launch the first offensive war on terrorism. This war was to take place in Afghanistan and Iraq. In October of 2001, the U.S. and Allied forces launched their military operation with the goal of overthrowing the Taliban regime and dismantling Al-Qaeda's infrastructure. At this point in time, the war had somewhat shifted to become more complex, but it is still one of the first efforts made to counterattack terrorism. Many others followed suit by forming international coalitions to protect their own countries. The attacks brought forward a reality that not many countries were prepared to face alone, and so many came together to see if their efforts separately could be made stronger as one. One of the earlier and most notable coalitions was was the NATO-led International Security Assistance Force, ISAF, in Afghanistan. According to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the mission was to assist the Afghan government in rebuilding its institutions, maintaining security, and combating the resurgence of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda forces in the region. Numerous countries contributed troops and resources to this effort, underscoring the global commitment to stabilize Afghanistan. These efforts made a great impact on the spread of global terrorism. But unfortunately, even though all of these efforts have been made, the concern of global terrorism is still a major problem, and there are still many challenges and obstacles to face. While there is still a wide number of terrorist groups out there that are still threatening people, the groups responsible for the 9/11 attacks are even still active today, including ISIS, the Taliban, and Al-Shabaab. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence states that these groups continue to enforce their harsh idealizations by assassinating people. Many of these groups continue to control their national governments, leaving the population vulnerable to abuse and possibly death if they do not follow the rules and expectations. People all around the world are trying to prevent new generations of these groups from forming by addressing the root causes of their creation. This includes fighting fighting against the financing of terrorism by being reactive to the constant changing of currency being used by these groups so that they are not able to have access to the amount of money that they are currently getting. Another way that people are preventing terrorism spreading is taking control of the internet, which is being used to spread the propaganda of the terrorists. With this being controlled, it would decrease the amount of members that join and believe in their idealizations because they would not be as easily influenced by it. Even though the world has come a long way from the attacks in 2001, there is still a long way to go and to ensure that people will be safe, but unfortunately this might not happen in our lifetime. The 9/11 attacks started a wave on shutting down global terrorism by forcing people to deal with an unprecedented tragedy, create a response to deal with the perpetrators around the world, and learn to overcome the ongoing struggles that we continue to face. I urge you to take this information and use it to not let history repeat itself, and use any of the time that you have to prevent the world from being controlled by global terrorism. As Tony Blair, former British Prime Minister, once said, "This is not a battle between the United States of America and terrorism. It is a battle between the free and the democratic world in terrorism." Thank you. Are there any questions?
In your opinion, what is the most beneficial solution to stop terrorism?
In my opinion, it would be not using war tactics, because many people have found those to be controversial because they are killing people in the process of trying to stop people from killing people. So my recommendation would be to try and control the politics side of things by going and influencing their government and trying to convince those leaders to take a more affirmative actions to stop their country from going to shambles.
Thank you.
Thank you.